trout that's brown. Now both of these are of course introduced. There are no native trout species here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Rainbow trout are from northwestern North America, as are the Chinook salmon that can be found in the main body of the lake. The brown trout is a European species, however. The ones that we have here, like many of the first European settlers to the Otago region, can actually trace their lineage back to Scotland. They did have a brief stop-off in Tasmania on their way down here, but like most sensible creatures upon arrival in Australia, they took a quick look around and thought it best to keep moving. Now the fish were introduced in the late 19th and early 20th centuries as coarse fish for our local anglers. The ones here in the bay are pretty lucky. Not only do they get fed 3 times a day, they also enjoy legal protection. Fishing has been completely forbidden in this part of the lake for more than 100 years. Their cousins out there, not quite so lucky. Not only does nobody feed them, we also have a 365-day fishing season. Now, the only large native fish life you're likely to encounter here are our long-finned eels, or tuna, as they are known in Te Reo Māori. A full-grown adult female tuna can be more than 1.5 metres long, more than 5 foot. They are absolutely colossal for freshwater specimens, as well as being incredibly long-lived. Hectic, and we've got some low clouds. So the entire boat is open to you, except for the bow. You can't go out on the pointy end. Everything else, however, is fair game, including our upper platform just here, though it does have a maximum capacity of 20 people at any one time. So please make sure we don't exceed those numbers. As you come on board, guys, there are steps down, steps up, high steps and low ceilings. We've got all those things on the boat as well, of course, so please do move with care. Boats, as you are no doubt aware, do move around on their own, and sometimes they do that unexpectedly. So a hand for yourself and a hand for the vessel is always good advice. If you'd like to have your boarding passes ready, you guys can follow me and we'll get you situated. Come on.
Kia ora, nau mai, haere mai, ko $1 million 2. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard $1 million 2. My name is Dan, and I'm going to be your skipper for today's excursion out to the beautiful Frankton Arm. And today I am ably assisted by my great first mate Germano, who, if you haven't already met, I'm sure will be around to introduce himself very shortly. Now, just before we get too far away from the berth, I have got a quick couple of words on safety for you team. So please don't be too alarmed that the first things that I choose to talk about are our life jackets. They are located upstairs underneath the bench in the centre of the upper viewing platform. Should their use prove necessary, we'll issue them to you, provide demonstrations on their proper donning and issue any further instructions as required. Please do obey all crew direction in the event of an emergency, though both Germano and myself can be difficult to hear, as we're usually screaming those instructions from the shore. Now guys, I like to provide a nice relaxed environment here aboard $1 Million, so I've only got a couple of things that I ask of you. First off, I request that you refrain from smoking and vaping on all parts of the vessel today, including our external areas. I also ask that children are closely supervised throughout our journey to ensure their safety and the comfort of our other passengers. You are free to move around the vessel throughout our cruise today. If you decide to head onto the upper platform, access to this area is via a ladder. The ladder looks an awful lot like a staircase, but it is a ladder, so when you come down, you need to face towards the back of the boat and come down it backwards. At the bottom of the ladder, you'll find the wheelhouse with myself, all things being well. Behind me is the main saloon, where many of you are now. On the right, or the starboard side of that, you can find Germano in the bar, and just forward of him are some nice warm woolly blankets for anyone who needs a bit of extra insulation today. On the left, or the port side of the vessel, is our head behind the red door. Behind that is our dedicated young children's and infants area with a couple of toy boxes to keep the little ones entertained, and at the very stern of the vessel is the aft viewing platform. We may close the connecting door, but that's purely to keep the heat in and not you guys out, so feel free to open and close that as you need. Now, the most important piece of safety equipment on board today is of facilities today. Please, I beg you, only flush what you have eaten, drunk and the toilet paper. Anything else will cause an immediate blockage, followed by something of a fountain feature, and the whole situation will very rapidly become your problem. If there's anything else you need to dispose of, please use the bins and trash cans we provide. There's general waste bin in the head, another one in the bar, and a glass recycling bin in the bar as well. Additionally, to reduce our waste, we are single-use cup free here on the $1 Million. All of our cups and glasses are totally reusable, so when you're done with yours, please make sure it doesn't go in the bin, but makes its way back to Germano at the bar, so it can go another round. I provide a live commentary throughout today's journey, and there will be the opportunity to ask me some questions a little later on. I'll let you know when we're doing our open wheelhouse segment, but if there's anything that can't wait, have a little chat with Germano. He's very knowledgeable. But I'd like to start you guys off with a little bit of local history, and the history of human settlements here in the Whakatipu Valley does not start with Queenstown, but rather the seasonal oldie settlement of Tahuna, established on the site of what is today the Queenstown Gardens, this pine-covered peninsula out to our left-hand side. Tahuna was inhabited only during the warmer months of the year, because the dense forest that we see around and above Queenstown today simply did not exist at the time of mouldy habitation, and the lack of cover fueled this area made it impossible for mouldy to remain here during the harsh alpine winters. But every summer they would return, for the valley was a great source of kai, food. Creatures such as tuna, weka, and of course boa, the great flightless birds that formerly inhabited Aotearoa, would be hunted for their meat. Additionally, the headwaters of the Whakatipu were a critical source of tuna, greenstone, a crucial material in traditional jewellery and tool making. Settlement would continue in this seasonal fashion for many years, until around 1830, when, as a consequence of European contact, changes in the materials used in mouldy tool making, and of course the brutal musket wars that raged across both islands of Aotearoa in the first half of the 19th century, the settlement was ultimately abandoned as unviable. For the following 30 years, the Whakatipu Valley was almost entirely uninhabited, but that changed in 1860, when a group of 14 people and 8,000 intrepid merino sheep made their way here from Dunedin. They established a station, a ranch, on the shores of the bay to our left, and they named their settlement the camp. They would enjoy a peaceful couple of years of agriculture, but in 1862, some of the musterers, the shepherds, found gold in what we call in English the Arrow and Shot Over rivers, sparking one of the great gold rushes of the 19th century. People flooded into Otago from across the world seeking their fortunes, and by January of 1863, the settlement had grown so much that it was to be chartered as a town. At a meeting of the newly formed council, they decided it should be called Queenstown, but they did not record a reason as to why. As such, in the intervening years, a few different theories have come about. Some of our old school locals like to say that on New Year's Eve of 1862, the mayor and his councillors were touring the lakefront, taking in the magnificent alpine views, and they decided that this majestic place was fit for a queen, hence the name. Another theory, that may perhaps be somewhat less fanciful, is that like Queenstown, South Africa, Queenstown, Tasmania, and the town of Cove in Ireland, that between 1849 and 1920 was also called Queenstown, is that the settlement was named in honour of Queen Victoria, the reigning British monarch at the time. But no one knows for sure. So, as with so many things these days, you can choose whichever set of alternative facts happens to fit best with your personal interpretation of reality. Whatever the reason, Queenstown flourished. By the 1870s, the population of Central Otago was more than 24,000 people. The Shot Over was found to be the second richest gold-bearing river in the world, behind only the Yukon of North America, and its waters would ultimately give up more than 58 tons of gold, just shy of 2 million troy ounces. But nothing can last forever. By 1890, those alluvial deposits had run dry. The prospectors and fortune seekers of the early days had drifted away to fresh strikes on the west coast of the South Island and parts of Australia. And by the dawn of the 20th century, the Queenstown population had dwindled to barely 200 souls. It looked like that might be the way of things. But in the 1920s, with an economic boom in full swing, tourism came to town. And ever since then, we've been taking care of you, our wonderful Whakatipu, the expanse of Whakatipu. Through the gap in the trees here, the 9th green of the Queenstown Golf Course. The Queenstown course is considered one of the most beautiful anywhere on the planet, owing to the spectacular views from every hole. It's also open to the public, so if anyone on board today fancies hitting a very small ball around a large field in a pretty place, you can head on over to the clubhouse and their fabulous staff will ensure that you're well taken care of. The The sharp-eyed of you may have also spotted the trio of goats lurking on the rocks by the shoreline there. The New Zealand goat is, of course, as we are all aware, famed not only for its great size, but also its almost unique ability to stand perfectly still in times of stress. The animals do this to maximise their camouflage and reduce the chances of detection and predation. And it's certainly not a pattern of behaviour that might occur because those three happen to be statues. Now coming up on our front left at the 10 to 11 o'clock position, we have the Queenstown Hill, or Te Kaputui, as it is known in Te Reo Māori. This translates as the Mountain of Intense Sacredness. Today, much of the upper slopes are dominated by a thick forest of Douglas fir. Those trees actually hide a walking track that will guide you from the top of the suburb and out onto the summit, where on a clear day you can enjoy some spectacular views of the Whakatipu Valley, as well as the rather lovely Basket of Dreams sculpture. Below the tree line, Queenstown Hill is one of our most popular areas with locals and visitors alike because of just how close it is to the CBD and all the cafes, bars, restaurants and shopping opportunities that affords. The convenience, however, does come at something of a price beyond the eye-watering cost of living here in Queenstown. That is that the 6 weeks of the year, during the darkest, coldest periods of our alpine winters, every single home that you see to the left now gets less than 1 hour of direct sunshine per day. Now looking out to the right-hand side, on the shoreline you'll see the Whakatipu Yacht Club, which does a great job of getting our young people out onto the water. But just beyond its jetty, there is a stone slipway with a wooden cradle on top of it. This is the slip used by the TSS Earnslaw, the huge white steamer with the red smokestack you may have seen tied up in the Queenstown Bay or heading out just in front of us. When they need to haul her out of the water, they bring her here, and like the vessel herself, the slipway is steam-powered. The little green shed, the one with the silver chimney, houses the compound steam engine from Antrim, a paddle steamer that was built here on Lake Whakatipu back in 1868. She was eventually retired in the early 20th century and then broken up in the 1920s, but the engine was retained and installed here, and that ancient machinery still roars back to life every 2 years or so to haul all 330 gross registered tons of the Earnslaw up and out of the water to ensure that this elderly vessel remains ship-shape and Bristol fashion. During the Second World War was requisitioned by the Royal Navy, where she found employment as the personal launch of Sir Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister of the time. Third of the century, and there are less than 1,000 left in the wild, all of them here on the South Island. They're both just dived away, sadly, but hopefully we'll catch a few more on the rest of our journey. There's around 70 breeding pairs that inhabit Lake Whakatipu. have another of our historic vessels coming up on the right-hand side. We're about to pass a rather elegant white sailing yacht with twin masts. This is the Lady Stirling. She was built in Auckland, Tamakimakondo, 1920, from the finest native New Zealand Coley timbers. Originally commissioned as a pleasure craft, this elegant vessel actually ended up having a long, distinguished career as a mobile dentistry, serving the island nations of the South Pacific for many years. Just slowing down now as we come in close to the suburb of Kelvin Heights. We come in close here to take a good look at the diverse array of designer homes that dot the shoreline in this area. And doing that puts us well inside the 5-knot zone, and I just can't afford to pay any more speeding fines at the moment. But more importantly, we're down here to say a big friendly hello to the wonderful people who call this part of the world home. Do be sure to wave, gang. Kelvin Heights is particularly beloved of our long-term residents here in Queenstown, as it is the polar opposite of the Queenstown Hill. It is north-facing and outside of the shade of the surrounding mountains, making this the vanishingly rare spot in town that enjoys several hours of direct sun throughout the year, cloud cover permitting, of course. And when it comes to our winters, that extra warmth more than makes up for being a little further away from the CBD and the shopping areas of Frankton. This sunny disposition may have also helped the area to a measure of fame back in 2005, when, as hopelessly quaint as it may well seem to us today, with more than 240 of them spread across the Motu, this became the very first $1 million suburb anywhere in the whole of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Now, you may have also noticed that there's a bit of a track here in between the homes and the shoreline. This is the Queenstown track, and it actually runs all the way from the bay and the gardens where we started our journey, along both sides of the arm, around the golf course and all the way down to Jack's Point. It covers a total distance of 30 kilometres, 18 miles. It's got a flat, easy grade, which makes it a wonderful, active way to see a whole bunch of town from a different angle. But if that does sound like a bit too long of a drive on the old Rolls Royce, it is open to bicycles and e-bikes as well, which makes things go by just a little bit quicker. Which, good as me, if we're to do, and to keep you on schedule, we're going to have to pick up the pace as well. So we'll hang a left, get out of this 5-knot zone, push those rolls up a little higher. But as we do that, we've got the first of our really architecturally interesting homes coming up on the right-hand side. The beige house, the one with the grey window frames just next to that scaffolded construction site, has a fascinating balcony just about to come into view from behind that pair of pine trees. So if you take a moment to engage your imaginations, cast your gaze out to the right, and you'll see that it's been carefully designed to resemble the bow of a ship. Not, perhaps, the most practical design out there. Some sacrifices in usable space have been made in the name of style, but it certainly is very striking. Space is a primary concern. The place for you is just over to our 3 o'clock. The grey poured concrete home with the big plate glass windows that's on the shore there is the largest in Kelvin Heights. The internal living space alone is 968 square metres, more than 10,000 square feet. There's also a heated swimming pool on the left-hand side where it steps down. There's an open-air tennis court on the right where you can see the high fences. And if all of that still isn't entirely satisfactory, you can choose how you leave by selecting a vehicle from the 8-car garage this colossal property has been constructed atop. You fancy a closer look at Kelvin Heights, but you don't want to deal with that hideous traffic on the Frankton Road at this time of year, you can always take a ride on the water taxis. They can bring you out here in about 15 minutes, or about 10 minutes rather, from the Queenstown Bay, and you'll see one of their vessels out to the right. This white one is called Cecil, and is the latest addition to the fleet. Though aside from her white livery rather than the orange, she is an exact copy of her sister Takara. today have probably already noticed that there are virtually no native New Zealand trees on the shores of the Franklin Arm. This is due largely to a combination of the glacial formation of the Whakatipu Valley and the consequent poor quality topsoil in this area, combined with harsh alpine climate of this region. This area is completely unsuited to the vast majority of native New Zealand bush and is naturally dominated by tussock and speargrass, which are originally native to northwest and North America, actually grow twice as fast here in Otago as they do in their native range. They also spread and propagate incredibly rapidly. The Department of Conservation estimates that were they to be left unchecked, they would spread over an additional 90,000 hectares, or about 220,000 acres, in Otago region alone in just 12 months. As you might imagine, these fast-growing, rapidly spreading trees cause more than a few issues for us. During our cruise today, it's rather likely you'll notice some of the signs of the ongoing attempts to control the numbers of these noxious weeds. Just coming up on the right-hand side. Now, I mentioned earlier that we saw a mated pair. The birds actually mate for life, so well adapted for their lives on and under the water that they can't walk on land. The bird's just out to our 3 o'clock now between us and the shoreline. They work together to build floating nests as they can't walk on land, and then when the chicks hatch, they actually carry them around on their backs for the first few weeks of life. Now, if you're visiting us from overseas, and in particular the United States, you may already be familiar with the Whakatipu, as they shot to international fame about 3 years ago, when their cause was championed by noted American comedian John Oliver, whose intervention not only propelled them to victory, but the unexpected level of international interest also caused a cascade of crashes on the Forest and Bird New Zealand website.
Now we're going to go backwards. So the way you came up is the way you're going to go down. So is this too cold?
Now, during your stay here in Queenstown, you may have seen and heard the name of this body of water written and pronounced a couple of different ways. In English, it's generally called Lake Whakatipu, but in Te Reo Māori, this is Whakatipu Lake. The reason for the difference in the pronunciation is the presence of an H following the W in the Te Reo spelling, and in Te Reo Māori, the WH combination produces a pronunciation like the letter F in English. Now, all Māori names do have meaning, but this one has very sadly been lost to the sands of time, as while we do know that Māori means fresh, Whakatipu is a total mystery to us. It's the official of our local Māori Iwi tribe, Ngāi Tahu, would use the lack of available context in the modern era for us certainty what was meant by the first people to this majestic valley when they named it Whakatipu. The black window just coming up on the right-hand side. This home, perched on the cliff edge, was completed in 1979. The owners asked for a timeless design, and I think the architect's done a pretty reasonable job. It still looks fairly contemporary even today. But when it was first completed, in the late 1970s, in a sleepy, rural South Island holiday town, the initial reception was rather less positive, and this, for the time, enormous and futuristic home was seen as ridiculous and completely out of keeping with the much more traditional holiday pads that dominated the area at the time. Sensible overall brown colour, giving them rather better camouflage. But what's handy for them is a bit inconvenient for us, and if we were to carry on along the shoreline, we'd end up running aground, which I'm told is something best avoided. So we're going to hang a bit of a left, and I'll see if I can remember where a deep water or two to guide us down to the dam happened to be. But by making that little change in our course, we are also afforded a beautiful view of the Remarkables Mountains out to our right-hand side. The Remarkables name comes from their three run true north, true south. Something that was so unusual to the surveyor who discovered this in 1957, noted that it was quite remarkable. As into their Moldy, the mountain was cold old the mountains named for the mighty river that runs by their feet. Of the round single cone stands at 390,608 feet above sea level. Now the remark not just famous and one of the islands of Queenstown. They are also, like Deer Park Heights, one of our local movie stars. Most they were cast in the role of the Misty Mountains in Sir Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings film trilogy. They're doing a real star turn at that for us today.
And even if you're not staying, it can be well worth a visit. There's a couple of absolutely superb restaurants on site here, as well as a world-class health, well-being and beauty salon and spa service. The water taxis can spirit you down here in just 20 minutes to Queenstown Bay. They drop you off on that floating jetty to the right and cut out dealing with the BP roundabout. But if you do decide to visit, one does have to remember that the Hilton is the Hilton, and luxury doesn't come cheap, so don't leave those credit cards at home. Now, there's another species of little black birds here in Cold Old Falls. These fellows out to the right, the ones with the white or silver beaks, are Australian coot. Now, they're a recent arrival to New Zealand. They only actually got here in 1958, when a flock of them were blown across the Tasman Sea from the Australian east coast. They ended up landing in Lake Hayes, just on the other side of the airport, and have since become well established. But despite this epic journey across the ocean to get here, they're actually quite reluctant flyers. And when they need to move in a hurry, rather than taking to the air, they just sort of flap their wings and run along the surface of the water, which here in Queenstown has earned them the rather colourful local nickname of the Jesus bird.